All right, so this is one of my all-time favorite stories. This is A Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift. And this is one of the most classic forms of satire out there. All right, so the original title is much longer. It's called A Modest Proposal for Preventing the Children of Poor People in Ireland from being a burden on their parents or country and for making them beneficial to the public. And I love that. Think about this. So let's give you some historical background. Ireland was under control of England for about close to 500 years and was denied union with England when Scotland received it in 1707. So Scotland and Wales became part of England, but Ireland was kept out of a full partnership. As a result, Ireland continued to suffer under trade restrictions and lack of resources. This situation led Swift to write this satirical essay. So at this time in history, many writers wrote and published pamphlets, or these short kind of essays, with proposals to solve economic problems in Ireland, as well as other issues of the time. Swift's essay parodied the style and method of these others. So this was kind of like the Onion of its time. They were making fun. He was making fun, satirizing the way other pamphlets were trying to propose solutions, which seemed silly. So his purpose was to capture the audience whose indifference he believed was to blame for the situation and to make them think of solutions. So part of the reason he wrote this was a reaction to what he thought the British were ignoring the Irish. So Swift satirically expresses his anger towards Ireland's colonial rule under England, as well as the hypocrisy of the wealthy of the time that were in power in England. He feels that Ireland is suppressed by English rule and ambivalent of their actions against their rule. So it bothers him that Irish politicians, as well as the masses of poor, fail to mobilize on their own behalf. So he feels like they're not doing enough to help themselves. So let's look at some of the things that's going on here. So in paragraphs 1 through 7, Swift hooks the reader by referencing the common sight of beggar mothers with their children on their heels. His proposal deals with the problem of the children of this certain age whose parents are too poor to support them. He continues by using statistical data to increase the factuality and credibility of his argument. So he makes it look like it's real. Through Swift's last comment, how the children do not work or support society, he begins to work into his biting satire regarding the ineptitude of his own Irish people. Swift seems exasperated by the situation in his country and censures the poor while critiquing the upper society that enables them. Initially, Swift's argument seems to make sense. He speaks out against abortion, infanticide, both of which most people would agree are not necessarily good things. But shortly he calls women breeders, which begins a comparison to the poor as animals, which is very important to his topic. Because if they're not given the idea of equal humanity, then they're less than human. In other words, they're animals. A comparison he continues later on in this essay when he suggests people should eat children in order to save pigs. His satire here shows how society views the poor during this time. They are less than animals. They are less than human. They are not worthy of equal status. So in paragraphs 8 through 19, Swift quickly moves to the specifics of his, quote, modest proposal, unquote. He begins by discussing the price of meat, the delicacy of the aristocrat's palate, and the availability of meat year-round. Next, he digresses into a story of cannibalism and the elderly, a group he won't give mention to since they will die off soon anyhow. They're not worth eating, and besides, they're tough. So Swift believes that people would find the consumption of children abhorrent, and as a result, the reader will try to find the true purpose behind his proposal. This section calls attention to the self-degradation of the nation. The idea of fattening up a child to feed a starving population paints a picture of an ill society. He also frames a critique of the Irish Catholic who regards marriage largely as a union to breed. He also pokes fun at England's consumption of all that is Ireland, although he never actually names the country. So we have a couple of issues going on here. He's kind of making fun of this idea where that you would fatten up a child to kind of keep a population going, which seems just idiotic in its base as well as immoral. But he kind of compares that to the way we kind of are doing things like that, by doing things like encouraging people to have children that can't afford it. And he also, by having the aristocrats of England consume Irish children, he's kind of showing how they're consuming the Irish culture. Alright, so who will benefit from Swift's proposal? The rich will profit from the poor, paying their debts, and the national economy will thrive. The aristocracy will have a delicacy to enjoy. The poor will receive money from the sale of their infants. Marriage and birth will be encouraged. Men will be encouraged not to beat their wives, since they could miscarry, and you want to have that child that you can sell in order to get more money. And of course, the exports of meat will rise, since the Irish will be eating their children. So therefore, they won't have to eat their pigs and lambs. They can sell that to other countries. So you can kind of see this kind of parity of benefit here. Swift denounces the absenteeism of landlords who live in far-off countries like England, where they spend their Irish money. So you have, the rich taking money from the citizens but not spending it in the community, instead spending it in another country. And Swift then moves away from the consumption of children to examine the reality of Irish economic problems. Many of the arguments presented here were real solutions to problems, but they had been previously rejected, so he then proposes something really outlandish to get people's attention. Like many good essayists, Swift knows there will be objections, so he presents the opposition side. He offers a list of ideas that others have suggested, from rejecting foreign luxury to encouraging landlords to treat tenants with respect. He nears his conclusion by suggesting that if someone else has a better idea, he would like to hear it, then ends ironically saying that he humbly asks his proposal be considered, since his wife is not of childbearing age and his children are grown, so he will not have to sell his child for meat. So again, satire, and think of all the satire we see today. So Swift just kind of started the genre, and we love satire in America. So I highly encourage you to enjoy this piece.